Hello, hello, and welcome, you beautiful badass, to the Magic is in You podcast, episode number 20, the podcast designed to empower you to tune in, tap in, and turn on the magic that is inside of you so that you can live intentionally on purpose, without self doubt and anxiety and fear holding you hostage so that you can truly step in to the badass that you know that you already are. My name is Kelsey Holmes. I am so grateful you are here today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Magic is in You podcast so that you can turn up the magic in your life, so that you can turn up the magic in yourself. I am a life and mindset coach, empowering badass women to truly cultivate the life that they desire from the inside out by overcoming fear and anxiety through somatic embodiment practices, subconscious reprogramming, and mindset so that you can live on purpose. Welcome to episode number 20. I am so excited and grateful to get to share this episode with you today. This podcast episode is close to my heart because, like most people in this world, I've lost lots of loved ones, lots of friends. I've never had children, but I also do have close people to me who have lost children. And so when I was recording this episode, I was thinking about these people in my life that I love so dearly, so much, who I believe could see some light with this podcast episode. And you'll hear it in my voice now and throughout the rest of the podcast. This interview is brings up all of the emotions. It is going to make you laugh. It's going to make you smile. It's going to make you cry. It's going to make you feel expanded. It's going to make you feel empowered. It's going to light a fucking fire under your ass. Tiffany shares so vulnerably, so open-heartedly, so fully her mission and how she empowers other people to live on purpose with purpose. And she shares how living Braedon Brave is not just empowering and transforming her life, but those around her as well. So make sure you connect with Tiffany on Instagram after and share your feed or your takeaways with her. I know she would truly appreciate it. And I know that this podcast episode is going to be so helpful for everybody, because as a human being on this planet, we all experience grief and sorrow and hard shit that we could let ruin us. And Tiffany has experienced some things that she could have let ruin her for the rest of her life. And she could have given up after this, but instead she has used what has happened, what she's experienced, to create something absolutely beautiful, absolutely profound. And as she talks about in the episode today, how even if our life isn't the one that we envisioned, it still doesn't mean it's a life not worth living. And so I'm so excited to share Tiffany with you today. And Tiffany is an angel mama to her incredible son, Braedon, who died in 2018, a wife to James, a dog mama to Macaroni, and a self proclaimed hope dealer, author, and budding travel entrepreneur. She is dedicated to helping women discover the beauty and possibility in life, no matter what challenges they face. As a bereaved mother, she understands the depth of pain and suffering, yet believes in the resilience of the human spirit. Her mission is to challenge societal norms that tell us that we can't heal ourselves, we can't live our dreams, and that we'll always have more time. She strives to empower others to live with more intention by using their bucket list as a guide to a more meaningful and impactful life. She'll inspire you to reimagine what's entirely possible for your life, regardless of the hardship you've endured. Her book, Journal to Healing, a keepsake memory book for mothers navigating child loss, is available on Amazon. And without further ado, let's dive into today's incredible and powerful interview with Tiffany. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Tiffany. I am so excited to connect with you. Everybody, welcome Tiffany to the Magic is in You podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for being here once again. And like I mentioned in the intro, Tiffany it has a really incredible and inspiring story. And I deeply connected to her story. I do not have children, but I deeply connected to Tiffany's story through witnessing loved ones in my life who have been through similar things to what Tiffany has gone through, and through having also lost many, many friends over the years, starting at age 11. I just really appreciate Tiffany and the light that she's shining. And I want to give you, Tiffany, an opportunity to just share a little bit, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your mission, about your journey. And thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Um, where to start? That's a tough one. I guess my life, if we rewind a few years
Yeah.
back, prior to losing my son Braedon, I kind of just like woke up one day and felt really dissatisfied, like, living the same year over and over and feeling like I wasn't really making progress. And kind of had this like teeny tiny like little awakening journey where I started just kind of stepping outside my comfort zone, because my comfort zone was really really small. So this is probably like 2015 or 2016, to the point where like I wanted to volunteer at that time, and even that was something that like I didn't want to sign up to be a volunteer and like unless someone else would come with me, because I felt too shy and too uncomfortable to even show up to volunteer somewheres by myself. So I kind of just started, dipping my toes outside the comfort zone when my son Braedon got sick. He had some prior health issues when he was younger, but he had been healthy for 11 years as far as we knew. Things were going well. Like he was in high school, he was thinking about what he wanted to do after high school. And I sent him out to get the mail one day, which is just across the street from our house. And when he came back in, he looked completely fine, but he said he didn't feel right. He said he felt like he couldn't catch his breath right. And he then later recanted because he wanted his friends to come over. Um, but then later on that night, it kept happening every time he stood up. So we ended up being in the ER later that same evening. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it was just from that day to the day that he passed was just 150 days. So completely fine to gone in 150 days. So he ended up being admitted to the ICU right then, that day, and we later found out that he had this rare disease, which is suiting that we're meeting today because it's actually Rare Disease Day. Um,
Oh my God.
yeah,
I
and
have full body chills.
yeah, and
Wow.
he passed from a rare disease. It's called hepatopulmonary syndrome. And he actually, not only did he pass from a rare disease, but he had a rare presentation of a rare disease. So the disease is normally found in people who have severe liver disease or cirrhosis of the liver. It's usually found in people who are much older than Braedon was. And he didn't have either of those things. But when he was younger, when he had his health issues when he was younger, he did experience liver failure. So they assume that that's why, he later on then presented with this illness. But so things just were obviously really crazy during that time. Um, but the thing about Braedon is that the whole time he was just like so upbeat. He was just like, he was just reeling in the joy of not having to go to school, being pumped that he could play video games all day. He started making friends in different time zones because he plays online, and then there'd be people to hang out with and play video games with while his other friends were at school. So he just had this crazy attitude that really inspired me. And, kind of, I don't know how I could have reacted differently because of his because of his inspiration, because of his attitude, because of how he showed up. Like the courage and grace that he had really was just beyond his years, because this was, he turned 18 just after he was diagnosed. And this was his second life-threatening illness at just 18. Like a
Wow.
lot of people would have went, really dark, and he just, like I said, he could just find the silver lining. I know people hate silver linings in grief, but he found the silver lining. We weren't pointing it out for him, he was pointing it out to us.
Wow.
We actually went to this appointment. We're in New Brunswick, Canada. So he had to go to this week-long assessment with the liver transplant team in another province. So him and I went, and it was a week-long assessment, which was super depressing. Like we had to go from one meeting to the next meeting to meet with all the specialists that would be part of his team. And he had a very high risk for surgery. Like liver transplant surgery is already one of the riskier transplants, but because he was on oxygen, he needed oxygen like 24/7. Like he had his own portable machine that we used here at the house. Because the hepatopulmonary affects it seems really weird because it's like caused by the liver, but it affects your body's ability to get oxygen into your blood. So it was like his blood oxygen, which our blood oxygen is normally, like most people's is 99 or 100, but
Hmm.
his just normal resting with full oxygen on was 85.
Oh,
They
wow.
they couldn't get it to go higher than that. And then like if he stood, if he was even standing, it would even go even lower. So that also made his surgery more risky.
Hmm.
And then because of his illness that he had when he was a child, he also had what they called internal scar tissue, which makes surgery again more risky. He had low blood clotting time, which again adds another layer of risk. So we were going to all these appointments, and I was trying to keep it together for him because it was very, very disheartening. And
Yeah.
while we were there, we also had the hotel we were at had like a surge, like an electricity surge from like a storm. So
Hmm.
like all of the like lights blew out in our room, like the light bulbs actually like burst.
Wow.
But one of the things that happened was that like it triggered it one broke his oxygen machine, his like plug-in oxygen machine, and it triggered like this internal alarm inside the oxygen machine that would not turn off. So I mean, he was fine because we had portable tanks as well. But we have this alarm going off, and I'm talking like hours, like we're getting ready, we can't get this alarm to turn off. Like we have to call a parent company to the company that we're dealing with in our home province there so that they can come and take this machine and bring us a new machine. And we're trying to get ready to go to the doctors for more appointments. And then after all of the week, the power surge and all of this craziness, we had to drive home during a snowstorm, a bad snowstorm too. And I'm not one to drive in a snowstorm. I get very, very nervous. But we didn't have the option of stopping and spending the night anywhere because he was now on portable oxygen tanks, and we didn't have his machine to be able to spend the night anywhere. So, a drive that was supposed to take us 3 hours took us like almost 7.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, it was just completely exhausting. And we got home and we came in, and my husband was like, how was everything? Like, how'd you guys make out? And like, without skipping a beat, like Braedon looks at him and he's like, it was the best time ever because no, it was great because like I had the best ever mashed potatoes and I beat everyone at Yahtzee.
Oh my
So
God.
my
Wow.
in-laws, my in-laws had driven down, like while we were there for our appointments, they drove down to pick us up and drive us to our appointments, and they took us out to dinner where he had the best ever mashed potatoes. And they would come back to our hotel room at night, and Braedon played Yahtzee. It was his first experience with Yahtzee. And that's what he took away from this horrid week, was that he had the best ever mashed potatoes and that he beat everyone at Yahtzee.
Oh my gosh. Boy after my own heart. I'm a spud girl myself, but That is so incredible that after such a chaotic, wild, what could have been, well, as you summed it up, hard week. The Yahtzee and the mashed potatoes were like the highlight, and how
Mhm.
he instantly, without skipping a beat, I mean, just I can feel the energy still years later from his inspiration, his like zest for life, his magic for life that he had in seeing and choosing to see life happening so beautifully around him, even even if it didn't really look or feel at all anything like that. He chose so intentionally, without second guessing it, that he just chose to see that beauty. That's incredible. How did you
Yeah.
follow that up in that moment?
I was just kind of stunned, like, and I didn't want to pile on top and say, "Oh my God, it was horrible." Like, I just like kind of left it at that
Yeah,
because
let
really rough week, but like he was just walking away with, such a good attitude that it just kind of like I don't know, put me in my place or something, like kind of been like, you know what I mean? Because I've always been myself, like a very, optimistic, like easygoing, happy person, like always the same way, looking on the bright side of things. Like I legitimately like had a boyfriend like way back in my early 20s that he used to say that I was too optimistic and that I just needed to just get mad about stuff sometimes, and that he found it really annoying that I could always look on the bright side of everything. But Braedon just kind of reminded me of that in that moment, right? To like, okay, like this is going to be hard, but we can find like the small joys, right? We can
Mhm.
find the little things that like make us smile and the little things that bring happiness to our day.
And I love that in that moment too, how he chose to remember it. It allows you now, years later, to remember that horrible week as the best mashed potatoes ever, and Yahtzee, and how much fun he had playing Yahtzee.
Hmm.
um,
Yep.
I oh, I really love that. And he probably got, just to guess, a lot of his optimism from you because you were so positive, and I would assume being able to be in that environment with you, that's where he got a lot of that. Do you think?
I like to think that for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. And
Oh,
people that know me and him say like, "Oh, well, he got that from you."
oh, I love that. And so through losing Braedon, you've chosen to, obviously, it's been a journey through grief, um, and life, but you've chosen to really use what's happened in your experience and Braedon's light and Braedon's magic to create so much impact. Can you share a little bit about what you are doing today to shine Braedon's beautiful light that was so beautifully just demonstrated in the story you just told us about, like the best mashed potatoes ever and Yahtzee? Can you share a little bit about how you're bringing his light, his magic to life still today through your magic, through your work, through your expansion?
So, um, when I was in, I'm just going to share kind of with a story,
Yes, please.
to bring it all together. So when I was in like my worst moments and the worst part of my, journey through loss, when it's hard to see light at the end of the tunnel, I was going through stuff in Braden's room and I found a guided journal that he had from school. And I was really excited when I found that. I couldn't wait to just start flipping through it. And it was mostly just like nonsense. And but then I turned the page and I seen in like his unique little hand printing that despite the fact that he would have been 17 when he wrote it, was so like childlike. It just has an innocence to it, but written right across the top of the page said things I want to do before I die. And it took my breath away because he never got to do anything on that list. Not one thing. And it felt like a profound moment for me because I felt like he was reaching out to me across space and time, reminding me to keep going, reminding me not to waste what had been taken from him, reminding me to keep experiencing life, reminding me of all the things that he wanted to do and that he wouldn't want me to give up, because so many people, when they go through grief, they give up. They say things like, well, how could I be happy if my child died, or if my spouse died, or if my best friend died? But I see it completely differently, because I believe, I'm not an overly religious person. I would consider myself more of a spiritual person, but I believe that Braedon is still out there somewheres. I believe that, we are energy and we will remain energy after we're gone. And if I cannot find a way to live with peace and joy in my heart, I feel like that will impact Braedon. That will impact him in his afterlife and how he moves forward through the next chapter, through the next journey, whatever that looks like, because I have no idea what it looks like, but I know he is out there. And I always think of this too. One of his favorite things to say, and anyone who knows him, like when I say these words, they can they'll say, I can hear his voice saying that. He used to say it all the time, eating breakfast. I'm bored. I'm bored all the time. Like he just felt like he was supposed to have 24/7 entertainment. So I always say, like when Braedon looks down, when he checks in on me, I never want him to say I'm bored. I never want him to say I'm bored. I want him to, you know, be filled with so much pride when he says that's my mom. So he has just impacted me in so many ways. So when I found his bucket list, I decided that I would complete his list and that I would also make my own list too. Because I think that that's one of the bravest things that we can do after we lose someone that we love so much, is that we can honor our own lives, is that we keep going, right? And we let who they were and how they impacted us to make us better. Like I am a better person for having known him, for having been impacted by him and being loved by him. And this is still part of his story. I think of that too. This is still part of his story. His story it's still going, and it's going through me. So I started working on my bucket list like immediately. And I started working on his a few years ago. And we've now checked 3 items off of his bucket list. And we have some really good ones coming up this year. And I guess that's kind of like the story. And now I just want to impact others to use bucket lists to help themselves. Um, when you're going through, it seems like so counterintuitive, like when you're going through something hard to start a bucket list. But for me, it's been the foundation of my healing, because when you go through like a really big loss or a really big trauma, like you lose so much of yourself. It's almost like suddenly not knowing yourself anymore, because it takes so much from you. So doing a bucket list at a time like that kind of like lets you try things. It lets you get out of your comfort zone, gives you purpose. It helps you reconnect with who you've been, but also who you're becoming, because you're becoming someone new because of what you've experienced. So that's kind of what led me here.
Well, I appreciate you sharing this story. I've heard you share this story before, but not in this way. And not this story, your experience, excuse me. I've heard you share your experience with finding his bucket list. And um, I I love how you really also connected how you could feel him, and like he was like this was the moment for you to find this bucket list at that precise moment in time where he could connect with you so that you could create this and what you have now. And I have witnessed people in my life who, or I think we've, I think, like you said, a lot of people in grief don't prioritize doing things for themselves and allowing this grief to fuel them into living more intentionally and on purpose. And I think how you, when you found his bucket list and you really, you could feel that this was what a gift that he left you, one of the many gifts that he left you, thousands and hundreds of thousands, millions of gifts that he left you, but and that you've really utilized it and you've created your own bucket list. I think you've said that you've even done 25 things on your personal bucket list, or
I've
24.
done 24 things off my bucket list, and three of those 24 were Braedon's, but they were also things I wanted to do too. Like we started a business, my husband and I. That's been something I've always wanted to do, and that's one that we share with Braedon. And some of the other trips that we took too, they were things that I wanted to do, and they were things that I even talked about that we talked about together,
Yeah.
that we were able to do as well. So some of them have been kind of belong to both of us, but we've been able to check them off for Braedon.
And some of these bucket list trips, not for just you, but for Braedon as well, have been traveling, which is part of
Yes.
what you and your husband are doing now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can
Yeah.
you share a
Braedon,
little bit?
he wanted to see the world, but specifically Europe because he really loved history. Like, his favorite movie was like Gladiator. When other kids had their room in like, I don't know, SpongeBob or superheroes, Braedon had his room in medieval times. You know what I mean? Like he had faux candle lighting and like a fake brick wall and like sword decor and stuff like that. Like he was always really into that. Um, so he just really loved history. So he wanted to see Europe. He wanted to go to the Colosseum and see like these things from history. Like he was fascinated by them. So that was one of the things that we did. And we actually walked the Colosseum on Braedon's what should have been his 22nd birthday. So we took those steps for him and we did that for him. So we've been slow doing his list because he was a really big dreamer. So
He had a big list, huh?
and not necessarily that it's really big, but visiting Europe, like going to Rome, Spain is on his list, Scotland is on his list. Like they're not like super easy, super like you have to plan financially for them and things like that.
Absolutely.
So we did check off Rome off of his bucket list, and we did that Colosseum for him. And then we also did, since he was little, he wanted to see Glamis Castle in Scotland. So the Glamis Castle throughout history has been owned by the Lion family, and that's
Mm.
his surname from his father's side is Lion. So like they used to like talk like it was their castle when he was little. I mean, it obviously isn't their castle, but he just always like had this idea that like he had this connection to this castle because they were the Lion family. So my husband and I in the summer of 2022, we also went to Europe again, and we brought Braedon's picture with us to the castle. And all throughout the castle, we put his picture with the generations of royalty that had lived there over the years. And I got pictures of his picture with all of the pictures of the royal members that who have lived there. So it's
Oh my
really, really
gosh.
special.
I saw those pictures today as I was just I was peeking through your stuff again today because we've been connected for a while, but I was just re-peeking and I saw those pictures today and I didn't realize that it was him with the royalty in the castle. That literally gave me full body chills when you were describing that. And I love that's so incredible. And it's so fun to be able to experience this not just for you but for Braedon as well and really
Yeah.
create that transformation and that experience for yourself
Yeah.
and for him. And you and your husband now have created a travel agency that's specifically around bucket list travel. Is that correct? An adventure?
I mean, it technically could be for any travel, but
Uh-huh.
we want to encourage and help people to check things off their bucket list.
Love that.
And we have a whole vision for it too. So right now we do have the travel agency, but further later this year, I am writing. I'm going to be releasing my second journal, and it's a guided travel journal to go along with the travel business. And we plan to launch a YouTube channel as a part of the travel business. And that was literally like Braedon's biggest goal in life was to be a professional YouTuber.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, so we're going to create a YouTube channel to share our travels. So we're going to really start documenting our own travels and sharing those to inspire other people to go out and, to do the things off their bucket list, to create the life that they crave, to, pursue the dreams and the things that, society normally tells us that we can't really do, right?
Hmm.
That they're not possible, that they're pipe dreams and this and that. So we are really excited about this. And even the name, the bee inspired travel, like I don't know if you noticed that it's spelt with two B's, and that's for Braedon BB. That's so that his initials would be a part of it. So Braedon BB is in there. BB is my maiden name.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I did see the double or the two B's in there, and I was curious how you said it. The B travel. That's so special. I feel like he has created a legacy that is going to live on for many generations. And can you tell us a little bit about how adventuring through his bucket list and through your bucket list has cultivated healing for you?
In so many ways that, oh, so hard to explain, but
Yeah,
um,
no, I know that was kind of a broad question, but
that's
can you
okay.
maybe a moment where you were adventuring on your bucket list that you noticed you were feeling that the healing
So
or him with you? Go ahead.
I think that it's changed even over the years too, right? Because in the beginning, working on my bucket list was giving me purpose. It was giving me a reason to even get out of bed maybe in a day. One of the things that I did really early on, like almost immediately after he passed, when I decided I was going to do a bucket list, was start a foundation. We since closed it, but for 3 years I ran the Braedon Foundation, and we helped 19 families. We did room makeovers and shopping sprees for kids in our area that have critical life-threatening illnesses. We ran a support group that provided free counseling to moms of children with critical life-threatening illnesses. So that in the beginning was sometimes the only reason that, I would do anything in a day was to work on this foundation. So it's kind of changed. Like I don't feel like I need it in that way anymore.
Mhm.
But when I do stuff on his list and my list, well, for one, when I do stuff on his list, it makes me feel like deeply connected to him. Like I legitimately feel like I could hear the sound of how amazed he would have been walking around the Colosseum. Like we were on a guided tour, but I kept wandering off on my own because I felt like I wanted to be more with myself so that I could feel and connect to that energy that of Braedon.
Yeah.
Um, and the weirdest thing happened when we came home from that trip. We took 3 flights home from Rome, and every single flight that we took announced that the flight was fully booked and that they were looking for people um, to check their luggage. So because it was fully booked and there wasn't going to be enough room in the overhead bins, but every single flight, the seat next to me was empty. Like how weird is that?
I'm sorry. I have like full body chills. That is that's magical feeling, quite
It was
frankly.
magical. I was like literally like crying in my seat like each time.
Yeah.
Like I just felt like that seat was like open for him to be there with me.
Yeah, I feel that in just you sharing that experience, like three overbooked flights, and each time the seat right next to you was there for him.
Like, how was that empty? Like, how were there three people missing from, like, one person missing from each flight? It was wild,
Wow,
but awesome at the same time. So
absolutely.
like it's working on it has helped me, feel connected to him, feel like in a way like it's almost like a way that I still get to be his mom by doing the things on his list. It's like a way I can care for him in a weird,
Absolutely.
strange way by, fulfilling his dreams.
I feel like it's the most beautiful way to be able to connect with him, though, because this, like you said, it was like he was there with you while you were on that tour. Every time you stepped away, you could hear how excited he was going to be and how he would have moved around the area and like through the tour and how he would have experienced it and seeing his joy and his inspiration and his light that he shined so freely and beautifully through his whole life. Um, I think it's the most beautiful way to be able to connect with him. I think that's absolutely incredible. Um, you wrote a post recently about how you chose a word of the year this year, and that it was the same word that you chose the several years after Braedon passed. Can you share a little bit about this and how
Yeah.
you are embodying this and moving through this year?
Yeah. So the word of the year that I chose the year after Braden passed was brave. And that's the word I decided to go with again this year. And the reason I chose it back in 2019 was because when I spoke at Braden's funeral and I stood before our family and friends, I made a promise to Braden to live as bravely as he did. Because as I was writing his eulogy, it just dawned on me like so deeply and so profoundly how brave he was, not just in how he faced his illness, which I think he did with so much courage and so much grace, but in how he lived his life, because he wasn't afraid to try new things. He wasn't afraid to put himself out there. He wasn't afraid to dream big and to, tell anyone who would listen. Like it took me years before it wasn't until, I started embracing brave and trying to be brave like Braden that I would even admit that I wanted to be a writer. I'd never even admitted that probably out loud before prior to that. And here he was just, a kid like telling anyone who'd listen, like he already started his YouTube channel. He had no idea what he was doing. His YouTube channel is actually still up, and sometimes it's like all about gaming, so it doesn't actually have him in it. It's just gameplay and him like doing narration. But sometimes like I literally put on headphones just to like listen to him. It's like really heartbreaking and also super comforting at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Just listening to him.
The
Yeah.
duality can
Oh,
exist.
there's so much duality and grief. There's so much duality and grief. So much.
Brave like Braden. I
Yeah, so it started with that promise, and then I wanted to be brave like Braden. And right after I was like, why the heck did I make that promise? Like, how will I even be brave? That doesn't even make sense. Why did I even say that? And then like then I find the list, and then it just eventually all comes together, and I'm like, this is how I'm brave. Like, this is how I'm brave. I'm brave by continuing to live, to really live, to not just because there's a difference between living and being alive that a lot of people don't talk about. There's a really big difference between living and being alive. And a lot of people here, they're just getting by. They're just getting
yeah,
by. They're alive. And especially people who've been through grief, especially people who've been through grief, right? Some people
yeah.
have such a hard time. Like just this Christmas, I ran into a woman who I'd known from a previous job years and years ago, and she had lost a son. I didn't know her when she lost her son. He had actually died a couple years before Braden, and I was asking her about the holidays, and she said, "Oh, I don't really celebrate the holidays anymore. It doesn't feel right." And to each their own, like you have to do what feels right to you. But my challenge for people is to think differently, right? Like I want to celebrate because if Braedon was here, he'd want to celebrate. He loved Christmas. He loved Christmas. And I think that's the bravest thing that we can do is to continue living, to admit that the life that we envisioned for ourselves isn't the only one that's worth living. I read that somewhere, and I just thought it was beautiful.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, I just had to take a minute to let that wash over me. The life we envision. Can you say that one more time?
The life that we envision living for ourselves. Because I envisioned this life with Braedon. My husband and I thought we would
Mm,
have other kids, but we experienced secondary infertility. We had a miscarriage. You know, our lives are completely different. But if you can look at your life and you could admit that the one that you envisioned living isn't the only one worth living, then you can find the reasons to keep going. You can find the reasons to, you know, experience joy and happiness and like life can still be really, really good. You can have
absolutely.
this and that. You can be happy and sad. You can be grieving and joyful. Like there's so much duality in the grief. The grief,
Abs-
it's always there, but it's just like it's almost just a part of me now. It's just there, you know, it's always there, but
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that there's not also joy.
Right. And being able to see that duality and be in that duality and also use the grief. I don't want to say use it necessarily, but allow it to be that fuel of no, I am going to live intentionally today because Braden would want me to, or wants me to, not would want me to, but does want me to. And I am going to create impact because he would want me to and does want me to. And I also the amount of bravery that you have created and the amount of steps that you've taken to be able to even admit that you wanted to be a writer and then not only admitted it, you backed it up and wrote a book. Can you share a little bit about your first book? And you've got another one coming out this year, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
So
please share.
it's a guided journal. It's a mouthful. It's a guided journal keepsake memory book. So, and it was born from my own experience through this loss. So, one of the things that I started doing very, very early on, like we're talking like days after Braden passed, was writing in my journal. Literally, sometimes I would just write out like moments of his life that I was grateful for. Like, you know, I'm grateful for the fact that he got to walk me down the aisle on my wedding day. I'm grateful for the fact that I was a really young mom, which a lot of people maybe look down on me for. But because I was such a young mom, we were closer than a lot of parent-son relationships. My husband used to say, "You guys are weirdly, oddly close." And another friend used to call us two peas in a pod. But I think it's because I was so young that, you know, we were so connected. So I would just write about these moments that I was grateful for. And journaling had been a huge part throughout my whole grief journey, like, you know, writing little letters to him, or, you know, if I see something that like he loved really tacky cars, like like a really fancy car, but like with the worst paint job, like you know what I mean, like yellow with like orange flames and like I don't know, skulls or something. Like he would think it was like amazing. So like if I see something like that, I write it down and I like make a note like I'm telling him in my journal.
Saw
And
the
then
coolest orange flames on this
yeah,
wild
yeah.
Corvette.
Or
That's so
like a
fun.
truck with um like weird patterns on it. Like it's just anything like really, really flashy. Uh,
I love it.
was his jam. So I would just like tell him about that in my journal. And then I just always had this journaling experience the whole time um throughout my grief journey. And then one night, like I was laying in bed and for whatever reason, Braedon has this little stuffed dog that he had since his very first life-threatening illness. His godmother, my best friend, when she visited him in the hospital, she gave him this little dog. And this little dog just became his favorite thing. Like we still have this little dog. And once he had that and he loved it so much, like everyone got him various different versions of this same dog. So he had his little tiny one, then he would have like a medium one, he would have like a medium big one, and then he would have a big one. And then like someone at one point even got him like a really large one that was like just as big as him. He never kept them over the years. He only ever kept the one, the original. And one night I was laying in bed and for like a split second, I couldn't think of what his name was. Like he named him Chewy. But for like a split second, like I felt like I couldn't remember his name. And then that was just like, sounds like so silly, but it was just like the worst feeling that I couldn't remember his name. And then I thought, oh my gosh, like I gotta write all this stuff down. Like, what if when I'm like old, like really old, and you start to forget things, like what if I forget this guy's name, or I don't know, I forget his favorite foods, which is like a weird thing to care about, but you just want to treasure every single memory so much. So then I was like, well, there's got to be some sort of like journal that exists where I can like capture all of these things. So then I started like looking, like, on Amazon, like just Googling, like this has to already exist. And lo and behold, it did not exist. So I was like, well, I should make it. I should make this journal. So it is a guided journal for you to record things like their favorite toys, their favorite foods, where you can write letters and glue in pictures and write down things you want to tell them or things you wish you said or things you want to apologize for. Um, and then you can keep it all in like this beautiful journal. So it was really born from my own experience and almost forgetting Chewy's name.
Yeah. And now it's being able to help other mothers and create that deep connection and that memory to where you can flip through it anytime to either tap back into Chewy's name or remember how he liked his mashed potatoes. Did he like him with just butter or did he like it with like a little sour cream on top? All those teeny little things that are just
Exactly.
that seem silly, but to our heart and to like they're everything, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And
Oh,
there's even little exercises on it to like there's an exercise to create your own Spotify playlist of all the songs that remind you of your child. There's an exercise to like ask other family and friends to write down a memory and share it with you so you can write those in the book. And I actually did that last year on the anniversary of Braedon's passing. We all went out to eat dinner at the restaurant where Braedon had the best ever mashed potatoes on the anniversary of his passing. And I brought little cue cards and set them on everyone's plate and asked them to share a memory with Braedon. So I was able to bring those all home and put them in his little book.
and that's so beautiful. I remember seeing photos of that dinner and but I didn't realize that you had were able to have little notes from everybody about their
Yeah.
memories with Braedon. And being able to have a guided journal like this is, I know, so profoundly helpful for people who are grieving because it's not what you're going to be thinking about when you're grieving. But if you can have somebody to suggest an opportunity for you to be curious about, for example, loved ones' memories or remembering, oh my gosh, he loved this song so much. I remember he danced to it like this one time and bringing that life back into it rather than just the loss, but bringing him back to life through the
Yeah,
memory. Yeah.
absolutely. You are because you're focusing, so much in the beginning of my lost journey, like so much of my mind was like stuck in the end, right? Because I was there with him when he passed away. And, you know, that image, right? It gets in your mind and it's all you can think about. And I would have intense, intense nightmares. And they would all be about those final moments, right? And then even worse things that your mind just kind of imagines, right? So when I started writing in my journal and writing about all these moments I was grateful for, it was like I was reconnecting to his life and not this blip because his death was a blip. He lived 18 years, right? That those final moments, they were just a blip in that timeline. So writing in my own journal, like it allowed me to reconnect with the beautiful life that he had. And his life was short, like 18 years is not a lot, but it was a good life. It was a really good life. Like he was so loved that when he was younger and he found out that like most people only have two sets of grandparents, like he was like shocked because he had like so many people that he called nanny and grampy that he was like, what? Like most people only have, and I'm like, yes, like normally it's only like your dad's parents and your mom's parents. And he was shocked. Like that's because he was just so loved. He had so many people in his life that cared about him.
That's so incredible to be able to have received so much love in his beautiful, blissful life, because it did
Yeah.
sound like it was a beautiful life. And like you said, being able to remember that it was more than just those the final blip, as you called it,
Yeah.
which, yeah,
Yeah,
I
because when
think
you
this,
think about the end, it's just so agonizing, right? But
right.
that end, like he's not living there.
No.
He's not living in that moment, and it's helping no one for me to live in that moment either. Not helping him, it's not helping me, it's not helping my friends and family.
Oh, I know Braedon's so proud of you and appreciates you so much. And I'm so excited to ask you this next question because I know it was on Braedon's, I believe it was on Braedon's bucket list. Actually, I shouldn't say I know, but can you tell me about shark therapy?
So I made up shark therapy because yes, from Braden's bucket list is to go into a shark cage, which I am going to be doing in a very short period of time.
Oh my gosh,
Next
I'm
month.
so excited.
March 22nd, it's like already booked. So shark therapy is when I sit and I watch shark videos, trying to mentally prepare myself for being in a cage with sharks on the outside because I mean, I'm not just afraid of sharks. I also have like a really deep irrational fear of water. So even if you were to like make me scuba and just make me go scuba diving and there was no sharks, like I would be terrified. We actually have a pool here and we've lived here for over 10 years and I have only put my head under the water in our pool once. Like I do not like my head to be underwater. Like it's like it like makes me feel like I'm gonna hyperventilate, like I can't breathe. So to be going into a tank, I mean, it is at the aquarium, so I do feel better about that. It's not going to be in the ocean. Um, but just to even go scuba diving is very scary. So, yeah, I've been doing my shark therapy, is what I call it, where I watch shark videos to try to like look at a shark and see him swimming around and like not feel like I'm going to have a heart attack.
Oh my gosh, Braedon Brave, this is like the definition. This is going to be so incredible. And I love that you're training. You're straight up training right now for this brave moment. And it's not just one moment, but it's all of the moments up leading up to this one moment of swimming
Yeah.
with sharks and doing your shark therapy. And so are you connecting? I would imagine you're connecting with Braedon when you're doing this work, when you're doing your shark therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's making me think of him a lot. Like he loves sharks, and I have myself to blame because I introduced him to Jaws. I'm like, oh, like when he just had like a little tiny like interest because they learned about sharks at school, I was like, oh my gosh, you have to see like one of the movies I loved when I was a kid. And so I showed him Jaws and he like absolutely loved it. And then that year I had gotten him like I don't know if you remember like the big bins that they used to have at like stores and it'd be like the DVDs for like
Oh,
when DVDs
totally.
started going out. So like the DVDs were always like $2.99, $1.99. So one year I got him like the Jaws movies in the bin and put them in his stocking and like the biggest reaction out of any gift that he ever got in his life. And he got a lot of big gifts. And like when he saw Jaws in his stocking from the 2.99 bin, like literally lost his mind. So
Oh
just
my
like loved sharks, loved sharks. So I like am kicking myself for introducing him to that classic, but Yeah, this is so far outside my comfort zone. Like last year, one of the bucket list items I did was to actually jump into my own pool. And that had been a goal of mine for multiple years to jump into my own pool. And I actually, like the last time I did it, I stood at the edge of the pool in the deep end for like 56 minutes and then I gave up. But this time here, we had friends and family over, and they had discovered that it was on my list and that I hadn't done it because, and then they like chanted and they were like yelling like for a really long time. So then I was like almost peer pressured maybe to do it, but I did finally do it. And even with the peer pressure and the chanting, it still took me, I think, over an hour of standing poolside before I actually jumped in. Like that's legitimately my fear of water.
Yeah.
I did almost drown when I was kid. When I was a kid, I was at a birthday party that was at the aquatic center here where we live, and the dad was like catching everyone, and I went last, and he thought he caught everyone, so I did not get caught, and it was like only another kid that wasn't even at our birthday party that was like pulled me out of the water, being like, "Do you need help?" Like not even a lifeguard or anything. So I've always had issues with water. So it should be really
Understandably.
interesting. It should be really interesting. Tune in March 22nd. I'll definitely be posting about it and
I'm
letting
ex
people know how I make it with that. But I'm really excited. We're going to create a whole YouTube video about the experience too for our channel.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to watch and to see this. And I can understand where your fear of water came from, especially with that experience as a child. And oh, and I'm excited to witness you being Braedon brave because this is like his thing. You know, he's cheering so hard for you right now every
Yeah.
time you sit down for shark therapy and so excited. Did you ever, when you introduced him to Jaws, did you ever cross your mind that you would be swimming with sharks for him?
Never in a million years. I actually didn't even know that he wanted to swim with sharks. Like I knew he loved sharks, but until I seen this and like when I seen this and said I was going to do it, like I always felt iffy about that one. I'm like, I don't know about the swimming with the sharks. Like I'll do a lot of things. Like one of the things that I did off my list was like rappelling. Like I rappelled off a hotel here.
Oh
And
my
like
gosh, that's awesome.
and that it was terrifying because I'm also very much afraid of heights. And people are like, oh, like sharks is like not as scary as rappelling. And I'm like, oh, I think sharks is way worse than hanging off the side of a building.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so good. So the rappelling was just training then for this moment coming up in
Yeah.
March.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That was like one of the scariest things that I ever did so far. I'm sure sharks is going to be really scarier, but I will say that that day that I did that, like when my feet hit the ground, like when I finally did it, because I don't know if you've ever done any rappelling, but
Mm-hmm.
it's actually kind of hard, like especially when you're super nervous and scared, it's like you keep locking your thing up. So like I kept locking the thing up. So the people up above that were running the event, they kept having to like unlock it from the top. So like I
Mm-hmm.
was dangling there quite a bit, like literally like almost peeing my pants, like dropping like so many F-bombs. Like I was like drunk trucker or something like
I get it.
like because I was so terrified. But when my feet hit the ground that day, like I felt like 10 feet tall. Like I felt like I could just like crush the world. Like that's the thing I don't think people realize is like when you do things that scare you, like how much it like builds you up or something. Like it builds you up. Like your
Absolutely.
just your inner strength, just like people are like, I know I did like a cold plunge one year, like when you like run into the ocean in wintertime. And someone was like, "Oh, like that wouldn't do anything for me." And I'm like, "Oh, you underestimate how stretching yourself and pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, even when it has nothing to do with like, you know, jumping in the cold water, like obviously has nothing to do with anything that I'm doing in life, but when you just push yourself and stretch yourself in that way, it really does, it changes you. And it
I
just it expands like what you what you think you're capable of, what you think you can do, what you might be willing to try. See, now I'm willing to try sharks, but before I wasn't willing to try sharks. Like we looked at doing sharks on one of our other trips, and I was just like, oh, no, 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 I'm gonna wait on that one. And then this one here, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm booking it. I'm booking it before we even go because I was like, I'm doing it. Like Brave is back on the board this year, and I was like stepping out of my comfort zone, and I really want to push to do more things off of his bucket list. So
Oh my gosh, I love
we have
that so
three
much.
this year.
Pardon?
We have three this year from his bucket list, so I'm really excited about that.
That is so exciting. And I love that you bring it back to the bravery and how not only is it like doing the brave thing, but how fucking badass you feel after you do the thing, after you do the scary thing,
I do.
rappelling off the side of the cliff, swimming with the sharks. Like then you create this resilience like you spoke about that makes you feel so much stronger, so much more capable in the things that the other things in life. For example, in your business that you're growing
Yeah.
with your husband, now all of a sudden what felt scary in your business, oh, that's nothing compared to swimming with sharks or rappelling off of that building. Like doing
Yeah.
brave things intentionally on purpose outside of your comfort zone, I personally believe is one of the most empowering things that we can do for ourselves in our growth.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it also got me more comfortable with failure. I should say that too.
Oh, I love that.
I was one
Yes.
of those people that used to be like, I would rather not try at all if even there might be like a teeny tiny possibility that I might fail, then I would just rather not try at all. I don't like, I'm sure it comes from childhood trauma, my fear of failure, but it was deeply rooted in me that this really intense fear. And that is why all those years where I said I was waking up and I was living the same year over and over again, because the fear of failure was holding me back so much. So putting myself out there and doing this, like one of the things that um I tried to do, I applied to be a TEDx speaker really, really early on, but I didn't get chosen. Like it was like the TEDx like local here at like our
Mm-hmm.
university. And I'm so grateful that I didn't get picked because one, it was like one of the first things that I failed at very publicly because I told everyone I applied. I was bringing them along the journey with me. And then I said I didn't get picked and it was like nothing. And it was like so shocking to me how nothing it was. Like, and everyone was like, good for you for trying. And looking back now, I'm so grateful that I didn't get picked because that was so early on in my grief journey that like I probably would have cried hysterically on stage and not been able to talk about it and probably would have ran off or something like and then I might never want to speak or I might not be here where I am now. So I'm so grateful for those two reasons. Like because it was just like, oh, like I just totally didn't get this and I told everyone that I was doing it and it was like a blip, like it was not even a big deal. So it made me a lot more comfortable. Another thing that I attempted to do on this bucket list journey too was it's called the Fun Day Footpath. It's a hike here that we have in New Brunswick, Canada. People come from all over to do this hike. It's really intense. It's multiple days. You have to like backpack and you're climbing like really steep terrain. And I, for one, did not train remotely enough. I did not train remotely enough. And on the second day of that hike, I didn't know it at the time, but I started just feeling like unwell and like I was getting like this like numb feeling like that was going up my leg and into my back. And I just kind of thought, oh, it's probably from my backpack because like the packs are so heavy because you have to carry literally everything that you need for the entire trip and all your food. And um, but it turned out that I was actually bit by a tick. So as I left the hike, I didn't finish it. Like I called my husband. It was super hard for him to get to us because we were so remote.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then he's like trying to find us. It was this crazy thing. And the next day after I got home, I actually started feeling worse, which felt really weird to me that I would feel worse because now I was rested. I had a bath, I had food, I had fresh water that I didn't have to dissolve weird tabs into, but I was feeling worse. And it was like I felt like a lot of pain in my my actual bones, like not sore muscles,
Mm.
which you would expect to be.
Right.
Um, and then I noticed the mark on my leg and I was just like, oh, like what is this? And then I was like looking it up online, trying to like figure out what
Right.
this marking was on my leg, and it looked exactly like a tick bite. So like I had to be treated for Lyme disease.
Oh.
So again, it was like, I've been talking like for months about this hike and I gave up on day one or one day in, right? Like the second day,
Hmm.
like I called her quits. And the other two people that I was with, luckily for them, after they helped me get rescued, they went on and they finished it. And it felt really depressing that I didn't get to be a part of finishing it. But it was another thing to like failing at it like made me realize like it's okay to try things, and I'm still not convinced I won't do it someday. This hike,
Yeah.
maybe put it back on the list and try again, but with a lot more training.
Fair, fair. Yeah. Oh, backpacking will kick your butt.
And
I,
it's really, really rough. Like
yes.
some parts of the trail, like you're almost like you gotta
Almost
like grab
crawling,
on because
huh?
it's so steep. Yeah. Like it
Oh.
was really, really intense. So yeah, I wasn't even close to being trained well enough. And my pack was way too heavy.
Mhm.
Or else I should have been like maybe carrying it all the time. But those failures, I feel like they helped me be more willing to try things, being more willing to put myself out there, being more willing to be vulnerable and
Mhm.
to know that like I can fail, and it's not taking away anything. It's not taking away my value or
Right.
or who I am. Like I'm still me.
Absolutely. You're still worthy. You're still deserving.
Yeah.
You still are you. And I feel like I want to bring it back to how you mentioned earlier, you didn't even really allow yourself to dream about being an author. Um, I I guess I resonated with that because for a long time I didn't allow myself to dream because I was too scared of failure, like you said, and specifically the fear of rejection if I failed. But then when you fail very publicly, like you just shared a couple of times, and then nobody cares, it's like, wait, I've been like holding myself back from living my life on purpose and doing what I desire because I was worried about failing and what these people would think about me, and they don't even care. Like, what? That
No,
realization.
people like barely notice. And I bet you
Right.
like so many people probably don't even remember that I even applied to be a TEDx speaker. Like probably like there's probably very few people that remember that I even applied to that. Like people
Yeah.
care so little. It's like more like we care. We're so worried about how other people are going to think about it. But it's like you have to worry about your own self. Like how are you going to
Yes.
feel if you didn't try?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, at the end of our life, the only person that we go to bed with every single night is ourselves. And so, really, when we can live from this place intentionally of and on purpose from our heart without trying to live up to somebody else's standards, somebody else's expectations, or what we
Hmm.
perceive to be somebody else's standards or expectations, like this is how we get to create a life that we are so fucking passionate about and so grateful that we actually lived. Because, like you said earlier, so many people are existing in this life, but they're not actually living in this life.
Hmm.
And I think that how you have how you've expanded on your journey and just like created the bucket list to actually really intentionally live on purpose so that you can feel like you've lived this full, rich, beautiful, impactful, authentic, inspired life is just the most beautiful thing. And I just appreciate you so much for coming on today's podcast. I want to be mindful of your time, Tiffany. I feel like everybody listening is going to have so many nuggets. I know that for me, I have been like crying on and off this whole podcast because I just appreciate you sharing so vulnerably and so openly and so fully with us because what you are doing, carrying Brandon's light or excuse me, Braedon's light, excuse me, forward and shining his magic with the world is so powerful. And I just appreciate you so much. Is there anything else that you want to share that you believe that people should know or that would inspire people to live on purpose and really go after creating what they desire like you have?
Um, oh geez. One thing that that always stood out to me, I heard this a long time ago on a podcast. And I think it was the first time I heard it was Ed Milet's podcast. And then I've heard numerous other people say this. And he said, that he believes, and I've come to now believe this because it just really resonated with me, that when we get to the end of our lives, that we will come face to face and we will meet the person that we could have become. And his goal in life and my goal in life is that when I meet her, is that we're almost identical twins. Is that we're almost identical twins. So I get to become who I could have been. And I think that's the most important thing in this life. And I think so many people, they don't get to become who they could have been. Not because they don't have what it takes, not because they're not smart enough, not because they're not good enough, not because they're not feisty enough, not because they can't figure it out, but because they're afraid, because they doubt themselves, because they think like, that's for other people, that's not for me. And there's this saying that's been going around on Instagram quite a bit. And every time I see it, I think, ugh, just kind of revs me up. It's that what is meant for you cannot pass you by. And I think it's BS. I think it's total BS. And that's why they say the richest land in the world is the graveyard, right? Because so many people take their biggest hopes and dreams and goals and the songs that they wanted to write and the movies that they wanted to make and the bake shop that they wanted to start and the art that they wanted to create, and they take it with them to the grave. What is meant for you can pass you by. It can absolutely pass you by if you're never willing to step out of your comfort zone. So that's like my biggest hope for people, is that they will get to the end of their lives and they'll meet the person that they could have become, and they'll be looking at their twin because they had the courage, they were brave enough to show up and to say what they want. Like, you wouldn't believe how often I ask people what their goal is or what's on their bucket list, and they say nothing or they don't know. They legitimately, their answer is nothing. Oh, nothing. I don't have a bucket list. Even if you don't have one written down, I know that there's something inside every single person that they want to do. Whether or not they want to admit it or not, there are things they want to do, there are places they want to see, there are experiences that they want to have. And I just hope that maybe today's episode inspires them to get honest and first maybe start thinking about and admitting, like, I had a really hard time admitting some of the things that I wanted to do because I didn't think they were possible, not because I didn't want them. So I hope that that's what kind of inspires people.
That is everything. Yes. I was just vigorously nodding the whole time you were talking, and uh absolutely. And that visual of coming to the end of your life and seeing who you could have been, I mean, that is chill you to the bone. And
Right?
I do absolutely agree. Things I like how you just called it totally honest. Like, things do pass you fucking by. Like, this life
Yes,
is
that's like
not promised.
the biggest load of BS that I've heard. And so many of the inspirational people online are saying, like, don't worry, what is meant for you can't pass you by. And yes, it can. It
Yeah.
absolutely can pass you by. Like, read the book. What is that book that I have? Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. What is meant for you can pass you by.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think I really, really appreciate you sharing that, because it does take so much fucking bravery to admit what you actually desire. Not to admit it, but to actually just like be
To
real with
acknowledge it.
yourself. To
to
acknowledge it.
acknowledge it.
Exactly. Exactly. You and I have both experienced where we wouldn't even acknowledge it to ourselves what we actually wanted because of the fear of what
Hmm.
ifs, rather than being brave enough within ourselves to at least start with ourselves. Like, you don't even have
Yeah.
to tell somebody, just at least
Yeah.
acknowledge it to yourself. Get true, get honest with yourself. This is your time now to live on purpose intentionally and actually create what you desire in this lifetime, because this life is fucking short and you never know.
Yeah. And it can change fast. Like, you know what I mean? From Braden's first symptom to his last day on earth was 150 days.
Yeah.
So, we don't have time to waste.
No.
We don't have time to waste. None of us have a guarantee on how many days we have left on this amazing earth. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know about you, but I want to experience it all. Like I want to do things that most people wouldn't even dream of doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like I want to visit like so many countries. Like my husband and I made a list of all the countries that we want to visit and like it's like at least 60. I ask people all the time like, "What country do you really want to visit?" So many people say none. I don't know. Like you don't even know where you want to go. Like I want to go almost everywhere. Like I haven't
Yeah.
been everywhere, but it's on my list.
It's on my list. Just give
Right?
me a
Like
flight, I'm there.
like I want to like stand under a waterfall and like ride in a hot air balloon and I don't know, go on one of those mountain coasters in Switzerland and try new foods in Japan. And like I just don't even understand people when they say that they don't want to do this life is amazing. This world is amazing. There's so many things to do and see and experience like and I want to be a part of all of it, every bit of it.
And it truly is that bravery to admit to ourselves, because I don't believe a single person who tells me they don't know what they want to do or they don't know where they'd want to go explore an adventure. I call BS on all of it. They do know, they're just not willing to be brave with themselves and admit it
Yeah.
to themselves what they actually want to do from the
Yeah.
fear.
Some people don't like they won't even admit where they want to travel to because maybe they don't see it as possible for them. Like they're like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's expensive. Like I don't think I can go there, so I'm just going to say I don't want to go anywhere."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. And this is the power of this conversation, though, and what you have created and what you are creating and what you are doing and like sharing your story. I'm so excited for your YouTube channel, carrying on the torch and like sharing your adventures and getting people inspired to actually admit what they truly want to adventure, experience, and do in this lifetime, even if it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah. There's a
Yes.
girl that I follow on Instagram that always says, and it's always really resonated with me. She always says, create the life that you crave, create
Oh,
the thing that you crave, create what you crave. So we'll
oh,
leave that as the last words for people to create, be brave and create what you crave.
oh my gosh. Perfect spot to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for coming on the Magic is in You podcast today. I appreciate you so much. I will put all of the links to connect with Tiffany, including Instagram and her websites and all the things down below. And thank you so much for being here today, Tiffany. I truly appreciate you and your heart.
You're welcome. It was an awesome conversation. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Oh, good. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day and love, light, and gratitude. Peace.